Okay, let's dive into this. Gentle parenting was supposed to change absolutely everything. It went wildly viral, and then in living rooms across the world, it completely broke. Welcome to the Sixplainer. Today we're unpacking the fascinating and honestly incredibly relatable life cycle of a viral parenting trend. If you've spent, any time online over the past few years, you've definitely seen parenting advice pop up on your feed. But what actually happens when highly complex psychological frameworks are forced through the meat grinder of the modern attention economy? Today we're looking directly at the data and this huge cultural shift to understand exactly how a massive online philosophy fell apart the second it hit the living room floor. And more importantly, what burnt-out families are pivoting to next. Gentle parenting went viral. Then it broke. That's the core thesis here, and it hits the nail right on the head. We aren't just talking about some minor disagreement in parenting styles. We're looking at a massive, incredibly popular philosophy that was literally everywhere online, but completely fractured when parents actually tried to apply it in the real world. It was marketed as this revolutionary way to raise kids, but for so many families, it just flat out didn't work as promised. Section 1. When gentle parenting broke. The toddler standoff. Picture this scenario. 20 minutes, one toddler, zero shoes on. You're just trying to leave the house, right? But instead of actually getting shoes on the kid, you're locked in this exhausting, never-ending negotiation. Honestly, this was the lived reality for thousands of parents trying to follow this trend. Because the advice they were consuming online had been so thoroughly stripped of its original context, parents were basically implementing a caricature of gentle parenting. They kind of ended up equating being gentle with having a complete lack of firm direction. And this whole phenomenon actually has a name. It's called negotiation theater. It's that exhausting process where clear boundary setting is entirely replaced by endless, ineffective bargaining with your child. Since the actual nuance of the original philosophy just got totally lost in the online hype, parents found themselves trapped in this theater. They were reasoning, they were pleading, they were bargaining, but they weren't leading. They were essentially acting out what they thought a calm, gentle parent was supposed to sound like based on the media they'd consumed, but totally losing the structure that a child actually desperately needs to function. Section 2. Flattened by the algorithm, the 12-second trap. In this brilliantly illustrates the massive divide between what we see on our feeds and what actually happens in reality. On one side, you have a viral 12-second clip. It gives you a perfectly calm soundbite, absolute zero context, and boom, it rakes in millions of views. But a nuanced reality, well, that's complex. It's messy. It requires constant on-the-fly adaptability. The algorithm overwhelmingly rewards the extreme, picture-perfect soundbite way over any actual psychological complexity. So the meta problem here is that short-form content actively flattens nuanced advice just to get maximum engagement. Think about it. The very medium parents are desperately scrolling through at 2 a.m. looking for help is inherently designed to strip away the exact complex context they need to succeed. The attention economy doesn't care if the advice actually works in your living room. It only cares if it keeps you watching and sharing. And nuanced, messy reality, it just doesn't go viral the same way a perfectly packaged oversimplification does. It really all comes down to this number, 12. 12 seconds. That is often all it takes for a clippable response to just totally blow up online. A creator posts a 12-second clip of themselves delivering a perfectly calm, heavily curated response to a child's behavior. And it goes viral because, well, it looks so easy. But this establishes a completely oversimplified and honestly entirely unworkable standard for parents who are just trying to survive a Tuesday morning. It creates this whole marketing angle where parenting advice cycles are shaped purely by what is the most clippable rather than what is actually effective. Which brings us to Section 3, the course correction. Enter Authoritative 2.0. So burnt-out families are now pivoting to a reboot. It's being called Authoritative 2.0. This is a course-correcting approach that's entirely focused on combining high warmth with absolutely unshakable, clear boundaries. You can think of it as the ultimate cure to the chaotic lack of limits we saw in the viral caricature of gentle parenting. It fully acknowledges that kids absolutely need warmth, love, and understanding for sure, but they also desperately need firm structure. It's a kind but firm approach that completely refuses to fall into the trap of endless bargaining. In action, this looks like a very structured formula. First, you lead with warmth by acknowledging the child's feelings. Second, you set the boundary. You state the rule clearly and firmly. And third, and this is the absolute critical shift here, you end the negotiation. Once that boundary is set, the discussion is over. Period. This structured approach actively and intentionally shuts down that negotiation theater that left so many parents feeling completely exhausted. So the crucial point is the contrast between these two. It's stark. Instead of chaotic negotiation filled with endless bargaining and blurred rules, Authoritative 2.0 relies on calm boundary setting. It's kind, yes, but it's firm, and it leads to a swift resolution. It's exactly how families are reclaiming their authority without sacrificing an ounce of empathy. Section 4. The cost of lost nuance. If we take a step back and look at the whole life cycle of this trend, it goes from rise to ruin pretty fast. The advice is shaped by what's clippable. The algorithm rewards those extremes. Then real families try to implement these basically cartoonish caricatures of psychology. And ultimately, the parents are the ones who suffer the burnout when that 12-second soundbite completely fails to get their toddler's shoes on. When complex advice gets flattened just for views, it's the families who bear the burden. Every parenting trend that goes viral gets simplified. But what gets lost in translation, and who actually pays for that? It's a really provocative question, isn't it? It forces us to reflect on the real-world consequences of consuming our psychological and parenting advice in these bite-sized, algorithmically driven pieces. So the next time a 12-second clip promises a total parenting revolution, ask yourself, what context is totally missing from the frame? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this gave you some genuine clarity on this massive cultural shift.